Good evening, everybody. Please allow me to call to order the Ferndale City Council meeting of Monday, December the 13th, 2010. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, first item.
Roll call, Your Honor. Council members Baker. Here. Galloway. Here. Lennon.
Here.
Piana. Here. Mayor Covey.
Here, all accounted for. Thank you. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Approval of the agenda, Your Honor, and if I may request that we remove item 4C, the presentation by Ferndale Public Schools.
Will do. We are removing item 4C from the presentation. Anything to add, Mr. Bruner? Do you have any?
Your Honor, I'd like to add an item at the end of the regular agenda regarding city manager recruitment and selection.
All right, item D then under section 7, regular agenda, we'll have the city manager transition item. Any other changes or requests? If not, a motion as amended. So moved.
Support.
Motion made and seconded to adopt the agenda, or to approve the agenda as adopted, as presented. Lennon made the motion. Baker seconded.
Ready to vote?
Yes, ma'am.
Council members Baker. Yes. Galloway.
Yes.
Lennon.
Yes.
Piana. Yes. Mayor Covey.
Yes, as well. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Brings us to presentations. The first one is the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2010 audit presentation.
Good evening. My name is Aaron Stevens. I'm with the firm of Abraham and Gaffney. And I'm here to present the June 30, 2010 audit report to you tonight, and I promise I will be brief. A couple of general comments before I get started. I would like to thank the city staff, but especially Jane Marie and also Tom Darling for their courtesy, cooperation, and assistance. Field work went very well again this year. This is our second year doing the audit, and we do appreciate the help that was provided. You should have the audited financial statements along with an outline and charts and graphs to help me go through the presentation. What I plan to do is just cover what I consider to be the highlights, but if you have questions at any time, please feel free to stop me and we'll go through those. So with that, if you turn to the, just past the table of contents in the audit report, we have the independent auditor's report, and the purpose of an audit is to provide opinions as to whether the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. The independent auditor's report that you see on pages 1 and 2 includes our opinions on the city's financial statements. Each of the opinion units in the city's financial statements received an unqualified or clean opinion from us, which means that everything has been presented in accordance with GAAP, and that's what you want to see. The opinions are actually given in the third paragraph on page 1, and it says, in our opinion, based on our audit, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. And so forth. And as I said, that's what you want to see as a council. If you turn past the MD&A, the management's discussion and analysis, and you get to the basic financial statements, pages 16 and 17 are what we refer to as the government-wide financial statements. But what I'd really like to do is focus on the fund-level financial statements, which is the basis that you're used to seeing, the presentation that you're used to seeing. It's the basis that you present your budgets on, or prepare your budgets on, and the reports that you see throughout the year. So on page 19, we have the balance sheet as of June 30th, 2010. So that is a snapshot at that point in time of the fund assets, liabilities, and fund balances for the governmental funds. And I like to focus on the general fund, which is in the left-hand column. And specifically, we look to fund balance. So fund balance as of June 30th, the second number from the bottom, $4,849,582. And portions of that total have been earmarked for specific purposes. So if you look at the third number from the bottom, the unreserved, undesignated fund balance is $3,987,319. That represents approximately 21% of your annual expenditures and other financing uses for this fiscal year. We recommend, as a rule of thumb, a general rule of thumb, a minimum of 20%. And the magic of the 20% is that would give you approximately 2 months' worth of operations before you needed to generate additional revenue, and should cover, theoretically, any cash flow needs that the city has. So again, that's a positive note. You're at 21% as of June 30th. If you turn a couple of pages, we get to the Statement of Revenues, Expenditures, and Changes in Fund Balances on page 21. Again, focusing on the general fund in the left-hand column. Total revenues for the year, about a third of the way down the page, $18,162,000. That was a decrease from the previous year of approximately 4%. Just below the middle of the page, total expenditures were $18,870,000. That was an increase of approximately 5% over the previous fiscal year. And so as you read further down the page, the results for the year ended June 30, 2010, was a use of fund balance. It's the third number from the bottom, a use of $704,439. For the year that ended June 30, 2009, you used $227,610. Next, if you turn to the charts and graphs, I'll give you a visual perspective of a few things here. The first one is a 5-year bar graph of the general fund revenues, expenditures, and fund balance. And as you can see, the city has added to fund balance in 2006, 7, and 8, and then used fund balance in 2009 and 2010. As of June 30, 2010, the total fund balance was approximately $750,000 higher than the June 30, 06 fund balance. On the next page, we have a couple of pie charts that detail the composition of the general fund revenues on the top, and then expenditures on the bottom. The largest source of funds for the general fund is, of course, property taxes at 54% of the total revenues, followed by intergovernmental, which would include federal, state, and local.
I'm sorry, what page are you on?
This is in the outline. It's not actually in the report.
Okay.
That's why it wasn't in my version.
Do we have the outline?
Was it on attached audit 4? Is that what the item is? Oh, here it is. Audit 4 in the online materials.
I'm sorry. I
have it.
That's
I
okay.
didn't realize.
You got it.
Sorry.
Okay.
They just had it as a separate attachment.
Okay. The pie chart on the bottom is the composition of the general fund expenditures. The largest use of funds is under public safety at 65%. That was at 60% in 2009, followed by general government, which would include the council, district court, the manager, finance, administration, clerk, treasurer, et cetera. That was at 17% for the year that ended June 30, 2010, 16% for the previous year. The largest or most significant change was under other uses, which is that the purple piece there at 11% in 2010. The prior year it was 15%. So the current year transfers were significantly lower than they were in the previous fiscal year.
So as a percentage of the size of our government, public safety grew and other undesignated shrank from
Right.
2009 to 2010.
Well, as a percentage. You have to keep in mind these are percentages, not dollars. So
Right.
if one...
But relatively, we're spending more on public safety now as a part of the composition of our budget than we were a year before.
That's true, yes.
5%.
Well, and this is all in the past tense. This is the fiscal year that ended on June 30th, not the current fiscal year.
That's correct. Okay, we also issued a report on internal control, which is in the bound document as well. And it's in the single audit section that starts on page 92. But actually, let's touch on page 94 first. The schedule of expenditures of federal awards. Because the city expended more than $500,000 in federal awards, you were subject to a single audit, which is an audit of compliance with applicable requirements for major federal programs. We did not have any findings related to the noncompliance to requirements of major federal programs. So your single audit, as far as the compliance section goes, was a clean opinion. We only had one finding that was related to the budget variances, and it was a very common finding as far as governmental entities go. It is described in the notes to the required supplementary information. You had a few departments or functions that were over budget. The general fund in total was not, but a few of the functions within the general fund were. This is probably the most common finding that we have, and we audit probably 200 governments a year. And this is probably the most common finding that we see. If you turn to page 98, this is really the summary of all of our results. Section 1 is a summary of auditors' results. It talks about the financial statements, which, as I told you at the beginning, we had an unqualified opinion on the financial statements. We had no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies related to internal control over financial reporting. We did have one non-compliance issue that was related to the budgets. As you read further down the page, we get to the federal awards. The single audit, we had no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, an unqualified opinion on your compliance with the major federal programs, and we did not have any other findings that were required to be disclosed under Circular A-133. The program that we did test as a major federal program was Community Development Block Grants. And as I said, I promise to be brief, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions for our auditor? If not, a motion to receive the audit report?
So moved.
Support. Motion made and seconded. Baker, Galloway. Thank you, sir, for that excellent presentation, and we're glad to get that audit, which does show, at least at the end of last year, good news. We still have the A+ rating, which is good news.
And we got it so quickly, which was wonderful, to get this within 6 months of closing our books.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very useful, very helpful.
And I guess I would also thank you for opining on, ratio of unreserved, undesignated general funds as a proportion of our total budget. I've been up here, I think it's my 9th or maybe 10th of these reports, and you're the first person, and I ask that question every year, how much of undesignated, unreserved should we have relative to expenses? You're the first person who gave me a number, 20%. So.
Well, it is a general rule of thumb because there is disagreement on that too. Some people think that's excessive. Some people think that that's not enough. They'd like to see 50%, but that's not really realistic either. So,
yeah. Well, we hired you, so I'm glad you're finally telling us. Thanks.
You probably won't have this answer, but usually we're pretty good at budgeting, and we come in at the end of the year pretty close to what we've estimated through the year. In this particular year, it looks like between the police department and fire department, we had increases of almost $1 million. Was that readily, was it obvious to find out what those amounts were from?
I don't have that with me, and okay. I don't know. Do you have that information? I mean, that would be in the detailed general ledger.
Sure.
Fringe benefit changes and some capital purchases that were grant related, so there was revenue to offset a portion of those.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion to receive the audit, and it's any other discussion? If not, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmembers Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
And Mayor Covey?
Yes, as well. Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming out on this blustery night. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Presentation of a resolution honoring Laura Lene Sophia.
All right. Lenan Sophia? Lene?
Lenan.
I asked Councilman Lennon how to pronounce it, so we got it wrong.
We
It's
sat
his fault.
together for quite a few years.
We, Mike and I each were contacted by former Mayor Bob McGee with this pretty neat information. I will begin, but may I ask Laura to come up and maybe stand at the podium so we can give her the, come on up. And I'll begin reading this, and Councilwoman Baker wanted to share this with me, if that's all right. At a regular meeting of the Ferndale City Council held in the chambers on the 13th day of December 2010, the following resolution will be moved and supported. It is with genuine respect for her accomplishments as a world-class athlete competing in triathlons that we, the elected officials of her hometown, extend this expression of praise to Laura Lenane Safaya. We proudly offer her our best wishes. And Laura, a former resident of Ferndale, a cheerleader, a 1973 graduate of Ferndale High School, went on to receive her teaching degree from Central Michigan in 1977. Laura then retired from teaching in 2009 from the Rochester Hills School District after 32 years. In 1987, Laura competed in her first Ironman Hawaii race and became the first place finisher in her age group in 1988. And Laura has achieved a long list of athletic titles, including a member of the 1993 and 2001 United States Triathlon World Championship teams, and
Laura has been ranked as an All-American for 21 years by the United States Triathlon Association. I remember, I think, all of those 21 years. In 2005, Laura was named the Triathlon Magazine Triathlete of the Year. Laura has held the world record for the Ironman Hawaii women's 50 to 54 age group, sorry to give your age away, for the past 5 years. And Laura was named the fastest woman in the world for 5 years in a row for the Ironman Hawaii. I think we need to clap right now. In 2010, Laura won the world title at Ironman Florida and became the United States Triathlon Association long course champion. Also in 2010, Laura competed in her 20th Ironman Hawaii and set another world record, this time for the women's 55 to 60 age group. Therefore, be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the City of Ferndale that we congratulate and recognize Laura Lenane Safaya with great admiration and respect for her accomplishments as a world-class athlete. Congratulations.
This was a big surprise. My sister and Bobby McGee orchestrated. Thank you so much. I got my start in Ferndale, and running the streets of Ferndale became my life passion for probably between Ferndale and Pleasant Ridge, that little 1 mile square area, for probably 20 years of my career. And I got started here. I was a cheerleader, and I did quit the track team in 9th grade. I thought it was too hard. And moved forward and just developed a passion, and have been at this for 25 years, and I've probably done 24 or 5 Ironmans altogether. And this always holds a special place in my heart. Ferndale has and will, because this is where it all began. I'm not the greatest athlete to come out of Ferndale, but, it's something that I love and became a passion for me and my life. And, I want to raise healthy kids, and I guess that shows that you can be healthy and keep doing something that you like, whatever it is. But thank you so much for honoring me.
Where do you live now, Laura?
I live in Bloomfield Hills,
Okay.
mostly, sometimes in Atlanta.
Well, these are great achievements. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And
That was great.
obviously, exercise keeps you young looking as well.
I don't know.
One more round of applause. Very, very nice. Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Brings us to call to audience, Your Honor.
Call to audience at 10 minutes to the hour. This will be a 30-minute period of time when members of the audience may speak on any issue that they wish to that is not on the agenda. And we simply ask that you keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less. You share your name, address, verbally or written.
I am Dean Bach, 22740 Woodward, and I simply want to challenge Laura to a race.
Yeah,
a .5K.
My money's on Laura, Dean.
Can we do the .5K, though? Back in August, Chief Kitchen retired and had a fundraiser event him and his family approached me for a fundraiser event at Boogie Fever. Half the proceeds were to go to the Ferndale Film Festival. The other half were to go to the Ferndale Police Officers Association. So tonight I am here to give a check to the Ferndale Police Officers Association on behalf of Mike Kitchen, former chief of Ferndale, for $1,000. Few dollars extra couldn't hurt the police these days. Here you go.
Thanks, sir. I'll accept it on their behalf.
All right, thank you very much.
I'd just like to thank Dean and Mark McConnell over at Boogie Fever for their hospitality. Without them hosting that, we wouldn't have had enough money left over to give away. So pleased to do it, and it's going to a good cause. Thanks.
Nice job. Good to see you, Chief. Thank you. Very nice.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Jay Schloff on behalf of the Ferndale Environmental Sustainability Commission with this month's Green Tip. This being the end of the year and the time where some of us try to make promises to ourselves that we may or may not be able to keep in the next year. Just like to suggest an easy one to add to your list. If you can just think of one green thing to resolve for the next year, all of us pick one little thing. If we add it up as Ferndale residents, we can make this city an even cleaner and nicer place to live. Whether it be switching over to all-natural cleaning products, or perhaps taking your own bag when you go out to shop to the grocery store, or walking downtown as opposed to driving when you come to downtown Ferndale to have a good time. Maybe not on a night like tonight. But any of these small steps you can take might be an easier promise to keep to yourself than, for instance, trying to go to the gym every day or giving up one of those vices. But if you add that to your list, we think that we can make this a nicer city to live in 2011, so that we on the Environmental Sustainability Commission would ask that you think about that when we move into 2011, and look forward to seeing you.
Thank you, not only for tonight, but for the whole year of work that the environmental group has done. Thank you kindly.
It's our pleasure.
Nice job.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager, and everybody at home. I'm Chris Hughes from the Ferndale DDA, Communications and Marketing Manager. I'm usually here on the last meeting, but I'm here tonight to encourage everybody to once again shop local and come to downtown Ferndale this Thursday for Merry Midnight Madness. We'll have late night shopping for late date shoppers, and who isn't that at this point in time? Everybody's a little bit behind, so our merchants will be open late on this Thursday, third Thursday. I also want to give you a report on our Holiday Ice Festival, which was awesome. We have many people to thank, starting with Santa Claus, courtesy of Dan Martin of the Community Foundation, and to the Ferndale Fire and Police Department for helping Santa make a grand entrance. So thank you to our finest. Of course, all of this was possible thanks to our generous sponsors, including our newest clothing store in town at the exclusive L at 214 West 9, Buffalo Wild Wings, Metro PCS, Search Optics, Rewald & Sons, Everdry Waterproofing, Dino's Restaurant and Lounge, our media sponsors, WOMC and the Woodward Talk, and especially each and every one of the 50 downtown merchants and friends who purchased ice sculptures that were all around town all weekend. We also have, and they're actually still here, and so the good thing about the cold weather is that we still have ice. We also have many fantastic volunteers to thank, including our wonderful Santa photographers, Ed Lane from Digital Lane and Larry Mills, who not only snaps great photos, he's a super good guy and stands out there in the freezing cold. Sharon Chess of Chess Roofing and Siding for organizing and sponsoring the Warm Hearted Cookie Challenge. All the music makers, including the Ferndale High School Band and Choir, the Middle School Choir, and Patrick Duran of Professional Guitars. All of Santa's helpers, and also Tom Perlman, who donated all of our wonderful new pedestals this year, and Larry Novak, who made it look just swell around Santa's chair. Some final numbers to consider is that we had more than 50 ice sculptures, as I said, 5 of them carved live downtown. The hayride circled all day long, and we transported at least, well, I'm not a good figure people counter, but at least 500 people throughout our downtown all day long. 1,000+ people skated at our rink, which was fun, and 10 charities raised nearly $2,000. So I am very happy to say that Holiday Ice Festival was a great event, and by the numbers, and we hope it was a wonderful holiday tradition for everyone who considers downtown Ferndale their hometown. Finally, on another note, we would like to invite everyone to a very special and a long time coming dedication. Vincent Chin will be finally honored on Wednesday, December 22nd, with the revelation of a plaque honoring him and commemorating the birth of the Pan-Asian Civil Rights Movement back in 1983, and that movement began here in downtown Ferndale. We will first meet at noon at the Post Bar, which is the former Gold Star restaurant, which is where that movement was organized in the aftermath of the violent hate murder of Mr. Chin, who was an employee at the Golden Star restaurant at the time. And Mayor Covey, you may want to enhance this because you are so much involved in making this happen, but we would like everybody who is interested or would like to come out and see this appropriate memorial and spend some time honoring a very fine young man who was.
Thank you for mentioning it, Ms. Hughes. We, again, are looking at Wednesday, December the 22nd at noon. We are planning to begin the ceremony inside the Post Bar, which was formerly the Golden Star restaurant. Some of you remember that Chinese restaurant, which is where the American Citizens for Justice first began to meet after the trial for Vincent Chin. So we've been in contact with the Michigan Bar Association, the American Chinese Organization, and a host of other groups. I expect some dignitaries, other officials, media, and then we will have a program inside, hopefully the Post Bar, and then travel outside to unveil the new memorial plaque.
It should be a wonderful occasion considering it's commemorating not such a...
We're commemorating the birth of a civil rights movement and
yes.
people working
and the reason for it.
For justice. Before you sit down, though,
yes.
The tree lighting ceremony was absolutely wonderful, and we appreciate the DDA organizing that. A couple of the council members, Piana and Baker, were there
Singing very poorly.
Singing. We were all singing, which is always frightening.
We all need lessons.
But I want to thank you for that. And do we know who won the warm-hearted cookies?
That announcement I will leave to the organizer of the event, Sharon Chess, and I'm not sure that she's prepared to make it at this time. There were some very aggressive groups out there, and so I'm sure everybody did really well. I mean, raising $2,000 in a day for charity is selling cookies is pretty darn good. And
it's just a neat event all around.
It was a wonderful day, and we were I was jumping for joy because everything went great, and the tree lighting was awesome, and the tree's beautiful.
One more round of applause for all the folks who worked on it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Ellen Shuffett. I'd like to just read this. On Saturday night, November 20th, 2010, my husband was shot outside our house while he was walking home from a party store. Two men were walking down the street, and as they were passing my husband, one man pulled out a gun. He shot first and then stole the grocery bag that my husband dropped. It was a miracle that my husband wasn't hit. The bullet soared past his ear, causing temporary damage, but he was okay. My husband was able to call 911, and the Ferndale Police Force immediately responded. While some officers were gathering information, other officers set up a perimeter and searched the area. The two suspects, who had separated in their escape, were caught, and the weapon which they had tossed was found. All this happening within a 45-minute time frame. The police were incredible. We were very lucky, mostly, of course, because my husband was all right, but also because there were enough police available to respond. Had there been another crime earlier in the night, there would have been less officers available to work on this crime, and two dangerous criminals may not have been caught. All of which brings me to this point. Please reconsider bringing back the laid-off police officers. With the horrible economy, the upcoming holidays, and the location of Ferndale, we can't be seen as sitting targets. We have already lost one Ferndale business owner and almost lost a resident. Please support our Ferndale Police Department by rehiring the laid-off officers and help keep our businesses and residents safe. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad that your husband is okay.
Mayor Covey, Council, Douglas Christie, Ferndale resident with the Ferndale Environmental Sustainability Commission, with another couple of announcements tonight. The first one is I wanted to mention that the group has a opening available. The information for becoming a member, and the application is available on the ferndale-mi.com website. You can download the application and submit that. So again, there is at least one opening available if you are a Ferndale resident and interested in environmental issues for the city. Please go to the Ferndale website and take a look at the application. The next announcement is our Green Tuesday, which will take place tomorrow, Tuesday, the 14th of December, at the Akulik Community Center from 6:30 to 8 p.m. This is our last one of the year, and the topic is toxic toy and product testing. So if you have a toy, or you've purchased toys for the holiday, or it could be a dog toy, it could be some dinnerware, it could be an old cutting board, anything that you'd like to have tested, we have a group coming in that has a special device, we'll call it a toxic testing gun, if you will, and they will be able to test your product, and it'll present the chemicals that are in there, arsenic, lead, other toxins. You can bring in 2 or 3 toys or products if you'd like. And again, that's tomorrow, the 14th, at the Akulik Center, 6:30 to 8. We're also going to talk about some places in town where you can purchase toys that are more safe. For example, they don't have lead in them, and the plastics don't have the carcinogens in them. And again, tomorrow. So that was that. And the last announcement is that the Green Tuesdays for next year are going to be at the library. They start in the spring, so hopefully the library will be up and running again sooner than later. And again, the Green Tuesdays are the second Tuesday of each month, and they will be in the library next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christie.
Good evening. I'm Sharon Chess, and I'm here this evening on behalf of the Financial Review Committee that I was asked to sit on this year with 11 other members. And we're working very diligently, and we are making progress. And we have a schedule so far of December 29th here at City Hall at 7 o'clock p.m. to hold our very first public forum. On January 10th, we will be prepared to present to you a formal presentation to the council with a PowerPoint executive summary and a report for you to review with our recommendations. And on January 12th at 11 o'clock at the Kulik Center, we will be presenting to the seniors or any other member of the community who would like to be in attendance. And all of this will be posted on the website as far as scheduling goes to confirm. And we'll be prepared to answer questions at that time. But we are moving along, and I want to thank council so much for appointing me to sit on the committee, because it has been eye-opening, and I've had an opportunity to meet with residents that I wouldn't have met before, and I think you appointed a fabulous group of individuals to sit on this. And I think everybody will be very pleased with the information that we're coming up with. And this is solely related to the general fund of the budget. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Chess, and the thanks really goes to you and to all the members of the committee that's worked hard for the past 4 months. Thank you.
Sherry Wells, 315 West Troy. You had asked at the last meeting, Mayor Covey, about the Rosie O'Grady's and the noise. And a week ago Sunday and Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, we felt no bass coming into our house. It was heavenly. And then Thursday and Friday and Saturday, it was back to normal.
Commissioner?
Good evening, Dave Coulter, County Commissioner. Let me start by congratulating 2 of you who are leaving to new jobs. First, City Manager, it has been my pleasure to work with you over the last 4 years. You've been a great professional person to work with, and congratulations on the Birmingham job. And Mayor, you're going to a job that I know very well. Let me publicly congratulate you, and also publicly tell you what I've said in private, which is if there's anything I can ever do for you in the transition, you know my number, and I know you'll call me. I've also said you have way more experience going into this than I did, so I know you'll do great, and the residents of Ferndale will be well served. And that's sort of my main reason for coming up. I just want to, I will be done being the county commissioner at the end of this year, and it has been truly my privilege and honor to represent this city for the last 8 years as their Oakland County Commissioner. And in 2 years, I will no longer have that job. I turn it over into good hands. But I just wanted to thank, although I'm here, the residents of Ferndale, really from the bottom of my heart, for giving me the opportunity to represent you and serve you in Oakland County government. It has truly been my privilege and honor to do so, and I thank you for all the support. Anything that I've been able to do is smaller than what I've gotten back from the community in terms of support and encouragement, and it's been a great privilege. And it's been a wonderful privilege serving with all of you. I'd say nice things about the council members, but I don't want to appear to be sucking up or anything. But I do want to say it's been a pleasure to serve with all of you over the last 8 years, so thank you very much.
Before you sit down, Commissioner Coulter, I just want to share something with you. Thank you for those nice remarks. And I happened to spend, obviously, a couple of days up in Pontiac last week, and I've begun the transition of meeting not only commissioners, certainly from the Democratic side, but also Republican county commissioners, as well as staff members. And I am amazed, I'm not amazed, I shouldn't be surprised. You are very, very well respected, very well liked. I had staff people come up and give me hugs and say, give Coulter a hug for me. The top Republican commissioner said you were a person that he had a huge amount of respect for, that you had integrity, and he appreciated your honesty. All the way up to Brooks Patterson, who had wonderful complimentary things to say to you, as well as the Democratic caucus. So if I may, on behalf of all the council members and all the folks of Ferndale, Hazel Park, and Royal Oak, we'd like to thank you for 8 years of service to our community.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Seeing no one else wishing to speak tonight with regards to the called audience, we will move to the item 6, the consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
Consent agenda item A, approval of the minutes of the meeting held November 22nd. Item B, approval to adopt a resolution of condolence for the family of former personnel technician Mary Good. Item C, approval to adopt the 2011 City Boards and Commissions calendar. Item D, approval to reappoint Brian Kramer to the DDA Board for a 4-year term expiring December 31st, 2014. Item E, approval of the interlocal agreement for ballot layout and coding services with Oakland County. Item F, approval of the Fourth Amendment to the Neighborhood Stabilization Program contract with Home Renewal Systems of Michigan, LLC, extending the deadline for sale of the NSP properties until June 30th, 2011, and eliminating the $5,000 contractor fee and revising the developer's fee to 15%. Item G, approval of a resolution and permit application allowing the city to work on Woodward Avenue and on 8 Mile Road in 2011. Item H, approval to accept the proposal of $5,266 by Dearborn Lithograph, Livonia, to print the 2011 DPW calendar and to charge the expense to the Sanitation Fund printing and publishing account number listed. And finally, item I, approval of the bills and payrolls as certified by the city manager to be paid subject to review by the Council Finance Committee.
Well done, Madam Clerk. Which items would anyone like removed for further discussion? If
F
not,
as in Frank.
Oh, yes, sir.
Please.
Anyone else besides item F? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'd like to remove item D, please.
B as in boy?
D as in dog.
I'm sorry, thank you. All righty, anything else? Then I would entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda less items D and F.
So moved.
Support. Baker makes the motion, Galloway seconds. Madam Clerk?
Council members Lennon?
Yes.
Piana? Yes. Baker?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
Mayor Covey?
Yes as well. Thank you. Next item.
Regular agenda item A, consideration of interim changes to the fiscal year ending June 30, 2011 budget. I
Thank
think that
you.
might be
Mr. Bruner?
2010.
I would like to invite Ms. Eubanks to come up and present the interim financial forecast.
As noted in my report, there's been, it looks like a slight change to the anticipated fund balance for 2011, down by about $310,000. Anticipated in the adopted budget was a reduction to fund balance of $157,000. so it's not a great adjustment. There were some changes to revenue side, the most notable being the increase in state shared revenues. We anticipated in the budget that we would reduce those by about $400,000. As of 2 weeks ago, when I looked at the state projections, they were still projecting what we collected in 2009. So we've increased the revenue by $400,000. Investment income down about $220,000 because of continued reductions to interest rates, and anticipated increase to miscellaneous revenue. Again, we have a refund of our prior year contributions from MMRMA, our risk pool. And then notably on the court side is a reduction of almost $500,000 in fines and forfeitures, mostly because of reduction of activity. So they're anticipating at the mid-year being about $500,000 down. They said they have had some increase, but probably not enough to offset the first several months of the year. Changes to expenditures are minor, the most notable one being that there is a request in for a purchase of a fire truck. So although the expense is high at $800,000, they're expecting a grant of about $700,000. So the net expense for that is minor, even though it does raise the budget a considerable amount. Fringe benefit changes, we did get in the new OPEB report, the other post-employment benefit report, which indicates our contribution for this year will be down, but based on the reduced number of employees here, the fixed fringe benefits will spread across a smaller pool, so it will not reduce the allocated fringe benefit rate, which we anticipated for this year to be about 109%. As Aaron indicated earlier, they look to have about 20% of fund balance and will still be in that range for 2011 with these changes.
All right. Well, we're in the request for information. I have a couple questions for you.
Sure.
If one just looks at the summary, to me, when I do this, it comes out to actually that we're better off, and so I guess I'm missing something. It talks about our general operating fund to decrease its balance, but if you take increase in state shared revenues and subtract the decrease in investment, add the miscellaneous revenues, I guess is the biggest item that is showing why this is going to decline the fire truck?
On the expenditure side, that's the most notable item. But actually, if you look at the second to the last page, has the individual expenditure summary. So you can see the individual changes by departments. And the same with the page before on the expenditure side, the same on the page before with the revenue. So the net decrease. Okay.
Well, I guess in the summary, again, I'm just looking at the summary, it looks like we'd be better off. Fringes went down by almost $500,000.
I'm sorry?
Fringes were down by almost $500,000?
Yes, based on the revised OPEB report.
Okay.
But it's being spread across a smaller pool of employees. That's
Sure. I guess the main question I would have, and one of the more disturbing aspects of this change, is nearly $500,000 reduction in revenues due to court fines and fees and court income.
Yes.
What does that mean? Why is that?
Less activity by the police department, less tickets being written, less police activity generated income.
That's a huge amount of money. Is that just for 6 months, or is that for a year?
No, that's anticipated for the year.
Okay. And what percent of that, what is the normal amount of income? In other words, what percent is $500,000?
It's about 25%. They anticipated about $2 million.
Okay, so it's down $500,000. Okay. And the fire truck, is that something the council has, is that something we included in the budget?
No. They will, you would adopt the change here, but they will bring that forward before they make the purchase.
And that's something that we plan on?
I think they already have the grant, don't they?
Yes, they got notification of the grant. But they didn't put it in the budget because if the grant didn't come through, they weren't going to request the purchase.
Right, we approved them applying.
How much is the grant for?
In excess of $700,000.
Is that, are you adding the $700,000 in here too?
Yes.
So those two offset each other almost?
Yes, they do.
All right. So I guess to me, the biggest change and part of the result of us having to now decrease our funds balance is a result of greatly decreased activity in the police department, resulting in a far lower amount of fines and income from tickets and.
Yes.
Okay.
And just to follow up on the mayor's comments, I mean, if I add up all the numbers in your memo here, I don't know what date it is, but
positive number.
It's a positive $528,000.
Right. Those are just the highlights, the most notable amounts. The individual amounts would be reflected on the following pages.
Okay, so, I mean, there have to, so you're saying just expenses went up across the board, what was it, $800,000?
Yes.
So we were off in our projections by 800 on expenditures?
Well, the most notable of that would be the purchase of the fire truck.
Okay, but I added up all these numbers and I ended up at a net expense of 70,000, and since we got 730, I think you said 800, I get to 528. So if 70,000 is the most notable, that's a lot of items to get to 8. You said our fund balance decreased by 300,000?
About 300,000, yes.
And if these numbers reflect a net increase of 528, there's another 800,000 gone, which
is not the fire truck.
Which is not the fire truck.
Right.
And how are those designated? I mean, if we just have to go through here and that's a decrease in income and increase in cost, is that?
Yes.
So.
Well, if it's not fringe.
Oh, here, so all the variances here are the positive, negative variance on the right side of the thing. So we had a huge variance in interest income. That's actually the next biggest after the 43rd District Court, maybe. Permits and fees, 239. But if we take these, if the negative variance here on the far right totals $800,000, $819,069. Okay. All right, thanks.
I have a question, Jane Marie, and I talked to the city manager about this earlier, and it's been something that's it's sort of been in the back of my mind. I just want to make sure we don't have any surprises down the line. I know that we incurred some overtime this summer as we were going through contract changes in the fire department, and I'm not picking on the fire department. This is the only one that I know about where this happened. Will we have any other sort of significant overtime increases as the holidays this season right now approaches, or moving into the end of this budget year that we should be prepared for needing to pull out of our general fund surplus?
We do budget for some overtime. The fire department was most notable in the adjustments that they requested as part of the interim because of their staffing changes. And some other things being resolved or not being resolved by the time overtime started heavily for them, which is normally July and August. So they've anticipated that already in this budget. You know, if anything unforeseen happens before the end of the year, we'll have to make an adjustment again. But those July, August issues have already been anticipated in this budget.
That's the biggest chunk. We won't have like another December, January chunk.
Not typically with them.
Thank you.
Ms. Eubanks, there was a $50,000 transfer out to another fund from the general fund. Was that for an additional $50,000? It says line item transfer out to other funds.
It's, that was included in the budget, which was not anticipated in the interim. Two of the most notable ones are the transfers from the pension funds to the general fund for services provided. And based on the current staffing levels, we are going to change the way that we provide those services. So it's not worth making a charge. We anticipate every month providing a certain amount of accounting services and support services that, based on the current staff, we just can't provide. So that was $30,000 worth of services. We also provide services to the sanitation fund that we're cutting back on because, again, the staffing level now with City Hall doesn't allow us to provide those services. We don't have time for those services.
So you have to contract out for them, or?
Well, no, we're just going to be reducing our services to those funds. You know, there's quite a bit of accounting, monthly accounting services that we don't need to provide, that we have, can have. Comerica provides much of the support services to the pension funds. So we're just changing the way that we do business in order to operate with 6 clerical staff in City Hall.
So it's leaving more money in the pension funds rather than billing
Yes,
pension
it is.
funds to the general fund?
But the amount that we charge the pension funds does not recover the amount of support service that we provide.
On line item 290, neighborhood stabilization, original FYE 211 budgeted was 259 for both revenues and expenditures. And then we show a positive, we show more income coming in and more expenditure going out to the tune of $100,000 each. So if our positive and negative variance, if our positive revenue variance is $100,000 and our expenditure variance is negative $100,000, that's $200,000 to the good?
They cancel each other out. The change in both cancels each other out. That is a federal grant, and the expenditures have to equal the revenue.
But in looking at this report, it says that we're spending $100,678 less in the positive negative variance column, but the forecast shows that we're spending $100,000 more. I don't understand that.
Because an increase to revenue is a positive variance, an increase to expense is a negative variance. When those two equal, they cancel each other out, or when those two are offset, one's positive, one's negative, they've canceled each other out.
So this is a positive or negative variance from net, not from actual expenditures.
From revenue or from expense,
Well,
not
if we have
from
a
net.
negative variance on expenditure, that means we're spending less.
A negative variance on expenditure is you're spending more.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Eubanks. Any other questions or requests for information with regards to the interim changes to the fiscal budget?
No, I just wanted to make one comment about the NSP. Isn't there a deadline in which you have to expend the federal funds, so that's why it would show?
Same with CDBG.
Yeah, you have to expend all that money, but I don't know what the deadline is, but it's coming up.
Yeah.
Or it's passed, because we've done an extension.
I believe it's the end of the year now.
Okay, okay. So that's why it would show up that way, because you have to use it.
So negative in expenditures is really positive, and positive in revenue is really negative.
No, an increase to revenue would be a positive change. An increase to expense is a negative change.
Any other questions? All right. Well, again, we are going to need to keep all this in mind. If income is down and the budget surplus is shrinking, then that just makes it harder to do what we need to do. We've had people say we wish we could rehire, police officers, and yet income is falling by hundreds of thousands of dollars, that means that can't happen. Is there a motion to receive the interim changes, or what is the required motion?
I would move to adopt the attached interim changes to the FYE 2010 budget.
Support.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion? Mr. Brunner, anything you'd like to share about our interim budget changes?
If the council wants to make additional expenditure reductions in order to offset these forecasts, then it needs to make some indication now rather than just spending down fund balance in order to deal with it. That conversation could happen now, or you could wait until after we've reviewed the long-term financial plan, which is the next agenda item, and you'll see how this, we saw the auditors present the last fiscal year. Ms. Eubanks has just reported on our current fiscal year.
Sure.
Now I'm about to present on the next
Sure.
three, and so that'll give the council a kind of a big picture.
Good point, and the city council members may not have ideas tonight about expenditures or changes they'd like to make. I would just say that we need to look at where income comes from, where expenses are going, and try and target them. Target them to the sections of the budget from where the decreases or increases are coming from. Then, if there's no other questions or discussion, Madam Clerk?
Okay. Council members Piana? Yes. Baker? Yes. Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
And Mayor Covey?
Yes, as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Eubanks. All right, Mr. Brunner, you're up. Item B, presentation of long-term financial plan.
Thanks, Your Honor. I first presented the city's long-term financial plan back in July. It's subsequently been updated, so you're going to get a look at the updated numbers tonight. We're going to go over revenue forecasts, expenditure forecasts, the financial balance analysis, which simply shows the difference between revenues and expenditure forecasts. We'll talk briefly about financial strategy to address those future imbalances, the next steps towards implementing financial strategies, and then I'll answer any questions anybody may have. In terms of the revenue forecasts, here we're focused on the three largest sources of general fund revenue, which account for about 3/4 of overall revenue. That's property taxes, state shared revenue, and district court revenue. Back in the July forecast, the property tax revenue was based on county-wide numbers, which I've now, in this forecast, changed to city-specific numbers. So you see that the forecasted declines are quite a bit lower than they were before, and these forecasts are based on dividing the county-wide average by the Ferndale-specific average in 2012 for the next 2 years, because the city's tax base is declining at a rate that's slower than the county average. Now, this is what it looks like charted graphically. We reached our property tax revenue peak back in the fiscal year that ended in 2009. Revenues peaked at $9.2 million and leveled off, and have now been declining since then, or forecasted to continue to decline for the next 3 years. So by fiscal year ending 2014, the city could be back to where it was in the fiscal year that ended 2003. The state revenue sharing forecast, which I presented back in July, was based on the assumption that it would be eliminated in one of the coming fiscal years, including the current city fiscal year. It was not eliminated in this current fiscal year for the city. So this forecast is based on the assumption that it will be in one of the coming next 2 fiscal years. And so this is state revenue sharing forecast charted graphically. You'll see that it peaked back in 2001. It's been declining almost every year since then. As Ms. Eubanks mentioned during her presentation, cities were spared from additional cuts this year. That's where you see that flat line there between 2010 and 2011. But based on the state's financial forecasts and the fact that Republicans have taken over both houses of the legislature and all the statewide elected offices, it seems like they're going to look at expenditure decreases in order to balance the budget instead of revenue increases, and state revenue sharing to local communities is likely to be a target. District court revenue forecast, as was just mentioned, it was originally budgeted at $2 million. It's coming in at about 1.5. So this forecast is based on that level of revenue for the next 3 years. So when you add all that up, back in July I presented a range, a kind of a worst case to best case scenario that ranged from $14.5 to $15.3 million for the coming year, and so forth on down the line for the next 3 years. You can read those. And so now in this forecast, I've consolidated that down to one forecast for the next 3 years, $16.3, $15.5, and $15.4 million in the 3 years ahead. This is the overall general fund revenue forecast summed up. You can see here, as I mentioned before, revenues peaked in 2009, have been declining since, and then are projected to continue going down. Looking at all forms of revenue together, not just the property tax revenue, if this forecast comes to fruition, then in fiscal year ending 2012, the city's total general fund revenue will actually be less than it was in the fiscal year that ended in 2000. Expenditure forecasts, both the last forecast and this current forecast are based on the assumption that general fund services the cost of providing those services will increase by 3.5% annually for the next 3 years. Our increases in fringe benefit costs are responsible largely for those increases. Of our total fringe benefits, 3 of them account for 75% of the fringe benefit pool, and that's our OPEB, other post-employment benefits, annual required contribution, which is $3.5 million, employee health coverage 1.7, and then our pension fund contribution that we budgeted for this year, $670,000. So in the years ahead, we can expect the OPEB annual required contribution. It's gone up and down and back up a little bit next year. And this is due in large part to the fact that the city's been reducing its workforce, which is why these costs have come down in the short term. So healthcare costs and continue to project to go up, and so the cost of providing other post-employment benefits, which are mostly healthcare costs, are going to continue to go up on a per employee basis, but where the total number ends up is going to depend on how many people the city actually employs. Same story with employee health coverage. This is a cost that goes up nearly every year, and over the course of the last 10 years has averaged 8.6% increases annually. And that's taking into account the things that the city has done to reduce the costs. That's not the cost of the status quo. That's taking into account things such as increasing deductibles and co-pays for non-union employees like we did this year.
Mr. Brunner, that doesn't include any possible city union concessions that we might be successful at in the future at asking for reductions or in increases in co-pays?
The 8.6% includes all the reductions that we actually have achieved in the past.
Right. So it doesn't, but we're asking for union concessions from our unionized workers, which we haven't gotten, correct?
That's right.
So if we got those concessions, that would change these numbers and reduce them?
No, because this 8.6% number includes, this is a historical number. It includes concessions and reductions in employee benefits that the city achieved in the past. So it assumes that the city will continue to reduce those benefits in the future.
So it would be higher if there were no.
If the city does not continue to reduce employee benefits, then these costs could rise at a rate more than 8.6%. the pension annual required contribution, the city didn't have to make any contributions for a number of years earlier in this decade. Started making contributions in the fiscal year that ended this year. When the current budget year, we're contributing $670,000, and in the years ahead, that is forecast to increase based on projections provided by our actuaries. That's due largely to the underperformance of the stock market in recent years.
If I could ask one more question, just because there's so many that I don't want to wait all till.
Sure,
it's
absolutely.
easier this way, for me anyway. Understanding that, but also understanding that because of the last 3 or 4 years when stock, up until last year, stock market was doing so poorly, that was a main reason why we had to begin contributing hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, in the past year, that the stock market is certainly rebounding and may continue to rebound, those numbers could decline as well. If the stock market bounces back, there could well come a time in a couple of years hence that we would be able to discontinue contributing to this fund if the investments.
If the stock market was to recover all the way back to where it was prior to 2009.
Okay, thanks.
That's true. And I believe the city clerk is compiling the information for the next actuarial valuation, and so once she completes that and sends it off to the actuaries, we should have the new report about 8 weeks after that. So we should have a new actuarial valuation shortly after the first of the year. And then we can update these numbers again based on that new forecast. So overall, expenditures forecasted to increase to 18.4 in the coming year, 19 million the following year, 19.7 the year after that, which is quite frankly relatively modest growth when you look back on the actual general fund growth in the years leading up to now. So this is the total general fund expenditure forecast charted graphically. That gray trend line through the middle is the trend during the actual period in blue, and you can see that red forecast line is creeping back up to that trend line, which, things revert to the mean.
Where are we right now? Are we at the bottom of the red line where it makes the V? What year are we right now? I can't
Well, right now we're somewhere in between the first red dot and the second red dot. The red line begins with the fiscal year that we just completed and received the audit on, and then we're forecast to go down to that bottom red dot. That's our current fiscal year. Financial balance analysis, this is just expenditures, revenues less expenditures. In the last forecast, again, I had forecast a range for the years ahead. This year, consolidated that down to one number. So the forecast for the next 3 years is 2.1, 3.5, 4.3. Those are in the event that the city did not address them. That's a cumulative forecast. So we'll get to the individual years ahead in just a moment. But this graph charts the revenues and expenses that we just talked about together. You can see the blue trend line is the actual revenues, and the red trend line is actual expenditures. You can see they were trending very closely over the course of the last 10 years, with revenues going up a little bit more rapidly than expenditures, and that's a good thing to have that revenue trend line above the expenditure trend line. But you can see now a great disparity with our expenditures continue to trend up in the future forecast, and then the revenues going down quite severely. So financial strategies to address that imbalance. Personnel costs account for nearly 3/4 of the budget. Non-personnel costs only about 1/4. The city would have to reduce non-personnel costs by 72% overall, down to just 8% of fiscal year ending 2014 expenditures in order to balance the budget without reducing personnel costs or increasing revenue. Consequently, relying on expenditure reductions alone would lead to a 42% cumulative workforce reduction in the absence of any other cost-cutting or efficiency moves. And this is what the imbalances look like on a year-by-year basis if the city were to address them. We see the current fiscal year, which really shouldn't be actual, should be forecast as well, but it's referring to the time that this council adopted the budget. We had a $3.1 million imbalance. We reduced the workforce by 31 FTEs, which was a 20% workforce reduction. You recall that was according to the budget the council adopted back in May. Next year, a $2.1 million imbalance would require 21 FTEs, and this is roughly speaking.
Okay, so when this chart was done, that it wasn't cumulative? Because we eliminated the 3.1 million imbalance for 2011.
Right.
So 212, 2.1 million imbalance is a brand-new imbalance.
Brand new.
It has nothing to do with previous year.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
And so forth. What this shows is that the council did address the $3.1 million imbalance in the current year. It faces a $2.1 million imbalance in the next year. If that imbalance is addressed, then it would be 4.1 the year after that. 1.4. If that is that imbalance is addressed at that time, then it would be $800,000 in. So
the trend lines are good. Our balances our deficits are shrinking.
The worst is behind us. The $3.1 million deficit we dealt with earlier this year looks to be like the worst.
You have to grasp for good news here. How many employees do we have right now currently?
I think it's about 160 FTEs. I don't have my budget book.
Because it was about 170 a year or two ago. So,
well, I think it might have been 170 full-time, and then you add in the part-time FTEs. I'm sorry, I don't have my budget book with me, but I do recall it's in the last page of section 1.
Okay. Well, we eliminated 30 employees, so
yeah.
It should be considerably lower. It should be around 140, 150, I would think.
So, Bob, just so I can reiterate this, the 21 full-time equivalents for 2012 is how many people we would have to lay off if we don't solve the 2.1 imbalance?
No, that's how many positions it will require to eliminate. Yeah, and this is based on the assumption that the average FTE is about $100,000. We know some are more than some are less, but here you see basically just dividing the imbalance by $100,000 to get your FTE number.
That's salary and benefits.
Right.
Union and non-union.
Yep.
Right. Overall city average of the full marginal cost of an employee, not the allocated cost.
All right.
So as I mentioned previously, that equates to a 42% overall workforce reduction. So in terms of financial strategies, the Financial Planning Committee is talking about a Headley override. This is a chart that I presented previously that shows property tax revenue forecast with a Headley override. This has been updated with the new property value numbers that are in the forecast. So what this shows is that gray trend line that's extending out into the future, that was the city's actual property tax revenue increase before the market started declining. The city averaged 3.3% annual increases, and you can see just how flat that actual revenue line was until we started having our real estate and foreclosure crisis. And what this shows is that even with the Headley override, the forecasted property tax revenue would meet that trend line out in 2014. So the city really wouldn't be any better off with the Headley override than where our property taxes were headed before this real estate mess started.
And Bob, this assumes that taxable value doesn't start to flatten out until 2014.
Yeah.
We continue to have our taxable value decreases for another 4 years.
3 years.
12,
There,
13,
there's just
14.
there's 3 years projections included. It's the same decreases that I referenced in the revenue forecast earlier in the presentation.
And then is it our projection that property values stay flat or start going up?
Well, they may hit zero in 2015. That's speculation at this point. But even once they start increasing again, they can only increase by the rate of inflation, which is about where we were before at 3.3%.
It's a couple years lag, so it's
Yeah.
going to be at least 2015, 2016, if there's any flatlining or recovery beginning, I believe.
How does, if you know, how does Headley account for deflation?
It doesn't.
So it can only go down to zero? It can't go into negative?
Well,
I mean,
let me see if I understand your question. When the tax base increases by greater than the rate of inflation, it drives the tax rate down, which is why our Headley maximum tax rate is now less than the 20 mils provided by charter. But when values go down, and that's called a Headley rollback. Well, once upon a time, there used to be Headley roll-ups, but the Proposal A took that away. So now when times are good, the tax rate goes down. When times are bad, the tax rate stays down.
but if the consumer price index, I mean, the taxable value increase citywide can only go up 5% of the rate of inflation, whichever is less.
That's right.
So what if we have a negative inflation rate of negative 1%? You know, negative 1%. Things are cheaper tomorrow than they are today.
Oh,
So if we go from disinflation to deflation, does Headley require that we do further rollbacks rather than than allowing the taxable value of the entire city to roll up or go up?
No, it would not reduce the Headley maximum rate.
But it wouldn't make it go down. It wouldn't make it go down either.
Right.
Headley wouldn't. But deflation is going to cause us to the values will continue to decline, and if our rate stays the same, we still get less money. I know what your question is too.
Well, I don't think real estate's not in the consumer price index, is it?
No.
So we could have property values going up, but the consumer price index be negative, and so the two don't, in fact, track each other.
Mm-hmm.
We could still get 5% away from
Under
whatever's
Michigan
Or
law,
whatever's
they'll
less.
just
So if
affect
whatever's
each
less is -1,
It might be that.
would our tax rate go
Decline.
further down, even if property values are going up?
I don't know. I have to research that question more closely. It hasn't happened since.
Of course, if we have deflation, that means supposedly
I don't think there's
costs
ever
go
been
down.
deflation in the United States, but at least in the modern era.
In the Depression.
Not since Proposal A.
Costs should go down, and fringe benefits and salaries should also go down in deflation, which is a bad thing. All right.
So the takeaway from this is that even with the Headley override, revenues only return back to where they were trending in the first place. So our next steps, we're awaiting the recommendations from the Financial Planning Committee. As you heard earlier tonight, those will be presented to Council in January after the committee holds its public forum later this month. February 2nd, that's 90 days prior to the May 3rd election. That's the deadline for Council to act to approve ballot language for that election if it were to put Headley override or any other questions before the voters. April 11th is the date when the fiscal year ending 2012 budget would be presented to the council per the schedule outlined in the city charter. We'd be presenting, if there were to be a question put on the ballot, we'd probably be presenting two budgets, one with the tax increase and one without. And then May 3rd would be election day. 3 days later is the deadline for the council to approve that budget, and then the fiscal year would begin and the taxes would be levied on July 1, 2011.
Let me ask a question. the May ballot, that would impact the July 11th tax rate? In other words, that's within the time frame to levy in July?
That's right. The May election is actually the last opportunity to have the voters approve a ballot proposal before the next fiscal year.
Some of us spent a good amount of time lobbying the school board for a long time to eliminate its May elections to cut costs. So since there won't be a May school election, would that be election then that Ferndale has to hold itself and pay for?
Yes, yes.
And so, May 3rd, sometime in the evening, we'll get a determination on what tax rate we can levy for FY 212, and then we'll have to make a decision, even though the budget doesn't have to be finalized until a month or 2 months later. We'll have to come up with a tax rate within 2 days of the results.
Well, the deadline for the council to approve the budget is May 6th.
So, yes, is the answer. I have a question about dates as well as I look at February 2nd being the deadline for council to approve ballot language. As we look at our regular meeting schedule, our first regular meeting in February isn't until the 14th, so we're really actually talking about January 24th, unless we want to hold a special meeting.
That's right.
Could I just ask a question? Is anyone interested in holding a special meeting? I think we should give people a heads up now. Otherwise, we need to make a decision based on the Financial Planning Committee's recommendations on January 24th.
I think we're going to have to.
That's my...
Yeah.
To hold a
unless we want to hold a special meeting sometime between the 24th and February 2nd.
Well, I personally believe January 24th. We've been talking about this for 6 months, and the Financial Planning Committee is a reflection of our public, of what they feel we should do as a community to solve these financial problems. So I would prefer January 24th.
So that our clerk has time to move things forward with the state.
Yes.
I feel the same way, just to make sure that we have enough time to get everything to the state. I don't like to wait until right down to the wire, but
when do you get your...
Wondered what you guys thought.
When does the committee give you its recommendations?
January 10th.
Oh.
We're also doing a public forum on December 29th.
We're doing another one on the 12th.
But I do see a difference between they're still planning and working and presenting, and Councilwoman Baker's, I do see a difference, because that is a whole other meeting. And it's important to get the people as knowledgeable and also informed and maybe on your side, depending on what our side is. But
we would be basically hearing comments on the previous meeting's presentation and making a decision all within the same night of the 24th. I'm just pointing it out because it's a tight timeline. I think February 2nd, we think we have a longer time than we really do. And we don't, it's the 24th. It's also the night we would be potentially appointing a new mayor.
And we're going to possibly be interviewing at some point new city managers. So, it's going to be a busy January.
I don't.
How many weeks?
I just wanted to see if anyone had an objection to doing it all on the 24th.
How many weeks is it? I don't have a calendar. I'm pulling one up. Do we have 2 weeks from the 24th to the 2nd, right?
No.
No, 1 week, right?
Basically.
Basically. Okay.
Your Honor, if I may, it's my intent at this point to have the issue on the agenda of the regular meeting in January 24th. What the council decides to do with it at that point is obviously up to the council. If it wants to make a decision that night, so be it. If it wants to schedule an additional special meeting at that time.
Sure. You're right.
Yeah, just
You can always add or change the agenda. Is that the climax of your presentation?
Yes, at that point, if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to try to address them.
I started asking questions earlier, sir.
Yeah, I asked them all the way through. Yeah, I don't think I have any questions. Depending on what the stock market does, that'll impact a little bit. I mean, the important point here is that budgets do change. They need to be the days of setting a budget and then not worrying about it for a year are long gone. And good news can come as well as bad news. In this case, the bad news got less bad. And, you know, there's a big chunk in here that says revenue sharing is going to end. But if it doesn't end, that's several $100,000 more we have. If it does end all at once, that makes it harder. You know, we're still waiting on unions, which I believe the city unions have not made any, some of the unions have not made any concessions at all, and that's going to impact on ballot issue.
Yeah, currently the police and fire contracts are expired and are going into compulsory arbitration. The clerical and professional union employee contract, as well as the police command and DPW supervisors contracts, all expire on June 30th of next year. So those contracts will be open in the coming budget year.
And is it true, Mr. Manager, that even if the economy turns around, and there are strong signs that the economy is slowly turning around after 3 or 4 years of pretty severe recession, but even a turnaround in the next few months and the economy and employment starting to rise, it's still going to take a couple of years before those benefits begin to show up on our numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned earlier, Mr. Mayor, our assessments lag the real estate market, and the real estate market lags the rest of the economy. Right. So we've still got, you know, foreclosures that are in inventory, and the real estate market is still all fouled up. So it's going to take a lot more jobs and economic growth to clear out that inventory of for-sale homes before the city starts seeing revenues increase. And again, even if things return back to the good old days, if we can call them that, property tax revenues were only increasing by 3.3% because Ferndale is a largely built-out community, right, and we're depending on that inflationary increase.
Well, the good old days, based on the old methods, will never come back. I mean, this is a new time, and we'll hear more about that, but those days are gone. Mr. County Commissioner, anything you know, I'm not putting you on the spot, but you've been through this with the county. The county, of course, does a 3-year rolling budget, which I think is really smart, so that they have actually balanced their budget for the next couple of years. Anything you'd like to share with us? Not to put you on the spot, but are we on the right track? Are we paying attention here?
Well, just that the last point is well taken. Even if the economy were to rebound tomorrow and unemployment went down to 5% and homes started selling again, it will be years before that revenue filters into the funds that you're talking about. And so you have to continue to be vigilant. Yeah, we do a 3-year budget at the county, and we're projecting that it could be another decade before revenues are what they were 4 or 5 years ago. So this is even with an upturn in the economy, and fortunately our auto industries did not go bankrupt. And so even with all that good news for local municipalities and counties and states planning budgets, it is many years ahead of difficult budgets.
Do you think it's wise for cities to look at rolling continuous 3-year budgets in advance?
It's been an effective tool in Oakland County, and I know the state now, Rick Snyder has said he's going to adopt a 2-year budget, which is what we started at when I became a commissioner. We added the 3rd year a couple of years ago, but and frankly, you're 80% there because you do project your revenues out, I think 5 years, if it was correct in the last budget. So it's a matter of going that extra step and then putting the expenses in a formal way aligned with those revenues. It does help you avoid, it's helped us at least in Oakland County avoid what you see in Wayne County where they just did 20% across the board cuts and all of those things. It does force you to be more proactive.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks. Any other questions? Ms. Tauman, could you flip the lights on for us?
You bet.
Thanks. Well, thank you for that presentation, Mr. Bruner. It was very, very helpful and certainly enlightening. Kate?
Well, I was just going to say, slide number 25 is the one that was sort of the most telling for me, and I've heard from a couple of the members of the Financial Planning Committee. We sort of decided as a council that we weren't going to be present and sort of change the dynamic of those conversations by our presence. So we haven't been sitting through those meetings, but I've heard from a few people that there have been a lot of conversations about how you balance revenues and expenditures. And just looking at expenditure reductions. I mean, these are, it was a good question of how many full-time equivalent staff do we even have left? And to reduce our full-time staff by another over 40% would just, you know, in my opinion, we're bare bones in a lot of places already. So to balance a budget as we've seen at the state level based on, you know, expenditure reductions alone is a path to disaster and imbalance. So I'm looking forward to hearing from the Financial Planning Committee on what type of balance they think we can strike between expenditure reductions and.
Maybe we can get in our notes next week, just a quick note on how many equivalent full-time employees we have, because I wouldn't mind knowing that. I used to know it. All right. If there's nothing else, we'll move on then to the next item on the agenda.
That brings us to regular agenda item C, appointments to boards and commissions. Up first is Carolyn Freeman to the Beautification Commission.
Thank you. Is that a city council or mayoral appointment?
Mayor.
Carol Freeman has been suggested. There are a number of openings on the beautiful commission, the Beautification Commission. Is she here tonight? Don't see her in the audience. But this would be someone we put forward. Traditionally, we ask council members to move in second.
I move to confirm the appointment of Carolyn Freeman to the Beautification Commission for the term ending December 31st, 2012.
Support. Thank you. Motion made and seconded. Piana and Galloway. Madam Clerk.
Council members Lennon?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
Piana? Yes. Mayor Covey?
Yes. Next item, Madam Clerk, is the DDA appointments. We have two openings. One is for Mr. Dean Bach, and one is for Gregory Meehan from Foley Mansfield. Let's start with Dean Bach, who's been nominated, who's in the audience tonight. Are there any questions or perhaps a motion for Mr. Bach?
Well, do you want to, can we do them both at the same time?
It's your call.
Well, they're both.
Are the terms the same?
They are.
Okay. They are. We've just been asked to hold Brian's.
Well, I move we appoint Dean Bach and Gregory Meehan to the DDA board for 4-year terms expiring December 31st, 2014.
Support.
Super. Motion made and seconded. They're both excellent gentlemen. Hey, Mr. Bach, you don't get to speak. Sorry about that. We heard from you earlier. You've done a ton of great work, and the attorney from Foley Mansfield has told me today via email that he's very excited to become a member of the DDA board. No other discussion then, Madam Clerk?
Council members Baker?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
Piana? Yes. Mayor Covey?
Yes. Congratulations. Welcome aboard. Then we are back to, yes, DDA, Dean Bach. We are back, Madam Clerk, are we to consent agenda item D?
That's correct. DDA reappointment of Brian Kramer to the DDA board.
Are we going to do the regular agenda item D?
Oh,
I'm sorry. I forgot we added.
It's my fault, Mr. Bruner.
And I don't particularly care which order we do them in, but
Let's do that next. Mr. Bruner added the city manager transition issue to the agenda.
pass these down. As a lot of folks have probably learned by now, the city of Birmingham has ended their city manager search by hiring me, which means that the city of Ferndale will soon need to embark on its own search. So I today have started focusing my time and energy on some transition activities. The first thing, two things I wanted to discuss with council tonight, because time is of the essence, is the potential appointment of an interim city manager. My recommendation is that the council seek an outside interim city manager, as it did in 2006 when city manager Tom Barwin resigned. And if the council were to direct me to do so tonight, I would contact the Michigan Municipal League and start finding out specifically what experienced managers are available for interim work. The second issue is then the recruitment and selection of if not a permanent replacement, an indefinite replacement. This is something that I don't want to be involved in the hiring specifically, but I would be happy to start soliciting proposals from private search firms or working directly with the Michigan Municipal League, if that is the council's choice. And tonight, I'd just like to talk briefly about the difference between the two. I've attached a kind of generic overview and proposal from the Michigan Municipal League about the services that they provide, and they use former professional managers to conduct their searches and conduct them much in the same way that a national search firm would. Their cost is generally lower than a national search firm, but the cost of the Michigan Municipal League search depends greatly on where the search consultant is located. So George Korthauer, just for an example, lives in Petoskey. He's the former city manager of Petoskey. To have him come down to Ferndale and conduct the search is going to cost more money than hiring someone who lives in southeast Michigan. As it happens, I mean, I did contact the MML today, and Joyce Parker is available, I believe, immediately, and she's local to Ann Arbor, so it's not, you know, right next door down the street, but she is local to southeast Michigan. So if the city wanted to engage the Michigan Municipal League right away, she would be the search consultant who is available. The MML generally charges 10% of the salary of the new manager is their fee for a basic search, and they will charge upwards, you know, anywhere from 12 to 15% for additional services if the council wants to conduct a process that requires more services. But that's the range, the 10 to 15% range. If the council wants to find out what other search firms would be available, either here locally, and there are others in the state of Michigan that do this kind of work, then I could prepare a request for proposals and put that out on the Michigan Intergovernmental Trade Network on a quick turnaround time.
Well, thank you. Thank you for putting this together and for introducing it. Let's start by asking if any of the council members have any questions they'd like to ask.
I do. Bob, when would you recommend that the interim city manager commence their work here in the city? Immediately after February?
My preference would be to bring the person in as soon as possible and have some transition time with them before I actually leave.
Okay.
So it will depend in large part upon the availability of a manager.
And then this typical project timeline that the Michigan Municipal League has put in their package of search services is a recommended 10 to 11 to 12 weeks timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So if we did the interim search manager now and also launched a parallel search for a new city manager, that would take us out 7. So we would be at the end of March, beginning of April, in which we would be, March, would it be? Because it's 7.5 weeks from now until your departure time. So we would be at the end of March, approximately.
That'd be 3.5 months.
In terms of we would be hiring the new city manager. Okay.
And that is, I mean,
If that's assuming the 10.
that person can start like that. If they have to leave another job, then they could be, well, Bob has a 60-day window, so that could put the people way out beyond the budget timeline.
Well, and that's, of course, the value of the interim manager, that if you...
That's a lot to ask an interim manager to what we need to accomplish between February, which we're
It's a
putting
lot
to the
ask.
ballot.
It's a lot to ask a regular city manager
Well-
to do what the city's going to have to do again this year. And, I mean, if given the choice between nobody and an interim, I strongly suggest it.
Concur on that.
All right, other questions for the city manager or for each other?
Well, I mean, I guess my comment is we need to get a city interim in here, you know, in a timeline measured in weeks rather than months. And I think, you know, if we're going to go through another budget process where we potentially lay off 20% of our staff, or whatever it was, 10% of our staff, we need to have that person be as knowledgeable about city operations and the budget as the current city manager and the assistant city manager. So whatever we do tonight, I think we have to take some sort of action to get a interim city manager in here with a focus on finances and really let all the other stuff go to the wayside. My biggest concern is getting this budget through with an interim, and frankly, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we'll have to.
We'll have to. We got 5.5 months.
I guess.
Well, and we still have, a very dedicated professional staff, Ms. Hughbanks, who's helped facilitate many budget processes before. My concern is that now is not the time to add interim city manager to her
We hear you.
other duties.
Well, let me ask the council, process-wise, there's 2 items here. One is to direct the manager to initiate, facilitate an interim manager search, and also the consideration to do an RFP or to set up a selection process with a company to hire permanent.
I'm comfortable having the MML help us with this search. Councilwoman Piana has, over the last, I guess, maybe 2 weeks that we've known that we might be facing this type of question. She's mentioned to me on several occasions that everything she's heard about the search processes that the MML goes through, sort of puts them on par with a private search firm. I know that we used a private search firm in the past. Some people weren't particularly pleased with the performance of that firm.
No, we weren't.
I think you've got, experts, here in Michigan. We're in a fairly peculiar budget situation in Michigan.
I agree. Do you want to move then?
I could try, and we'll see if I go in the right direction. I would move to direct the city manager to initiate and facilitate the interim city manager search process, and to retain the Michigan Municipal League to concurrently conduct a recruitment and selection process for a new city manager.
Well done. Support. This is seconded by Councilman Lennon. Baker's motion. Is that motion adequate, Mr. Bruner?
Crystal clear, Your Honor.
Thank you. I thought so as well. Discussion on the motion.
Yes, please. I haven't had the opportunity to read their entire process for their search firm. Would we have the RFP presented to us at the December 22nd?
It won't be a request for proposals, it'll be their actual proposal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, that we would approve.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
At this point, the direction is for me to solicit a proposal from the MML that will come back to council for its approval.
Okay.
Could even have a special meeting. We used to have a lot of special meetings, not that you want to at holiday time, but
I'm here.
there's a meeting next Monday, is there not?
For
Full legal money?
For parking.
Full legal meeting?
Yes.
Yes. It will depend in large part on when the person is available to come and meet, but if the council is desirous of doing it fast and scheduling a special meeting, I'll attempt to do that.
That is something I would like you to attempt to schedule, since this is a really important activity for us. I mean, even though we want to expedite as where possible, I mean, really our goal is to find the best fit for us. And so how do we balance those two competing sort of approaches to our search here? So, and in the RFP, is that where you would put what type of selection activities the council would like to do? For example, I was really impressed with the City of Birmingham's request for the city manager applicants to present to council. Is that in the RFP where we would articulate what those types of activities?
Yeah, that would be included in the proposal from the Michigan Municipal League. I will work with them to create a proposal that I would recommend that would include some of those kind of additional activities. And then when we meet again to discuss that,
okay,
the council can decide, what it wants to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is that it, Councilwoman?
Yes, it is.
Good. Those were great ideas. Any other discussion on this matter? Madam Clerk, then.
Councilmembers Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
Piana? Yes. Baker? Yes. Mayor Covey?
Yes, now we are back to consent agenda item D. I will introduce again, and that is that the DDA is interested in, I concur as the appointing authority, the idea of reappointing Brian Kramer, who's currently on the DDA board, to a full 4-year term that it would take us through December 31st of 2014. Ms. Wells, I think, asked that it be pulled, so let's hear from her.
All right, thank you. The Downtown Development Authority is a board or commission under the Ferndale City government. You had explained the procedure recently about applying for boards and commissions at the request of a citizen. Doug Christie also did tonight about the Environmental Commission, which has been posted, as has the Beautification Commission and Arts and Cultural on the website. I attended as a member of the public the September, October, and November regular DDA board meetings. There I heard that there were 3 openings coming up and that nominees were being sought, and that there could be 2 residents on the board. I live closer than anyone else they've ever had on that board as a resident member. One of the terms was because Mr. Perlman had already served 2 terms and could not serve any more terms without a break in between. The board jokes about Mr. Perlman being the landlord of most of the businesses downtown, but one of his tenants I spoke with only knew of that 1 opening. That tenant did not know of any of the other 2 openings that some of these business people could apply for as well. My understanding was that Dean Bach applied on his own. He initiated that application, that the other candidate that they recommended was recruited. I also applied. However, I did not find the openings on the city website. I did find the application easily on that website and did submit it to the city on Monday, December 6th with a copy to the DDA. At the DDA November 9, at the December meeting, a regular board meeting of the DDA, other applications, if there were any other besides mine, were not mentioned, much less acknowledged, including mine. There was no word mentioned at all. With the DDA asking for volunteers, as you've heard them do several times, that seems very inconsistent with me. Also is the fact that at the end of November they had a special meeting about parking. I didn't hear about that, was totally unaware. I was told that, well, it's posted on our window and that's all we have to do. Well, I've expressed interest on behalf of myself and other neighbors of the downtown area about the parking issue. So I'm not hearing a consistency in volunteers. At that meeting, you were present, Mayor Covey. The DDA, you had advised them that they might have to consider contributing back into the city, whose services are being used in the downtown area quite frequently at no extra cost to them. They commented that they had donated $1,000 towards the noise ordinance situation. Well, some of their businesses have also been causing it. So those are my concerns about the DDA that do need to be brought to the public. They are part of our city, and they need to start running like they're part of it, not like their own fiefdom. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you kindly. Okay, then again, back to that item, I do submit to Mr. Brian Kramer for a reappointment. He's actually living very close to the downtown as well, in Ferndale now, on the east side.
Ardmore, I believe.
Ardmore.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Back at the beginning of my term, there was a similar situation with the Planning Commission where the council was presented with, one name, and it turned out that there had been several other applicants. And there was some contention, and what we requested that night was that although we would like our city staff who works with those boards and commissions to please give us recommendations on who they think fits the profile of what they would want on that board, that we also be able to see any other applications that were submitted for that position. It seems only fair that we see all of the names that were in contention, not just the ones that rose to the top based on that particular staff person's preference. I would ask that we notify our DDA director that we would like to hold her to the same standard to which we hold our other department heads here internally in the city, and that the next time we have more applications than seats available, that she make a recommendation, but that we get to see all of the applications, not just the ones she's recommending.
You're exactly right, and it's really a process issue. Chris, or the DDA director would have no issue with that. The way it works is nominations or applications can come in anytime, as you know. Mr. Bach applied a long time ago, more than a year ago. So I think in an effort to cut down on paperwork, there was a time, Scott remembers, when we would get these every 2 weeks in our packets, dozens of applications. So it's partly on us to find out from the clerk, are there a whole lot on file? We don't always let people know when there's vacancies, because we don't always know when there are vacancies. But your comments are well taken. Do we know if there's a number of other applications on file?
I have not been involved in this process at all.
Are they required to?
The clerk's office should be handling board appointments and reappointments. So I have not received Mrs. Wells's application. I do not have a copy of the application of the man from Foley Mansfield.
Well, we'll have to find out, because maybe it's different. The DDA is a semi-autonomous organization. It is linked with the city, but it's not subservient to the city.
Sort of like the library board. Yeah.
Mr. Chris?
Mayor, if I could, this particular board also, it is a mayoral appointment subject to the approval of council. So the process with respect to an applicant should be formalized. However, at the end of the day, the mayoral appointment is the language of the ordinance that would govern, subject obviously to the approval of council.
Appreciate that, Mr. Christ. And it is a mayoral appointment, and yet you need a majority of council to support it. So council could vote no, and then the mayor would select from another person from another group. All right, anything else on that issue? Madam Clerk?
Do we have a motion?
Oh, we do need a motion to reappoint Mr. Kramer. Is there one?
Well, I think maybe, we haven't come to a conclusion about how to solve the transparency notification issue versus the mayoral appointment. That's where I'm having questions.
I'm comfortable making a motion on this with the understanding that Christina will be asked to adhere to the same guidelines that we ask our city department heads to adhere to when they make recommendations on boards and commissions which they are involved with or oversee, and that in the future we get all of the applications that have come in that will likely involve Christina coordinating with Sherilyn as applications come in.
Okay, I concur with that, and I would also go one step further. We require all our city positions available, committees to be available on the city website, and I was unable to find it on the DDA website.
And again, Your Honor, that would require someone in charge of those boards and commissions notifying the clerk's office. I'm the one who posts those vacancies. I was unaware that the FESC was seeking another member as well. So process and communication issues.
It is process, and these are very good questions. And with the DDA, then are you looking at perhaps the motion that it would include a request that the DDA provide council members with any and all applicants?
I think they should provide the clerk with any and all applicants, and that she can include it in our packets when we make appointments. These appointments come up every 6 months or so. Someone will go off. We'll have a vacancy come up. We deal with the DDA board a couple times a year. But I think really this is an internal coordination issue.
Sure.
Christina needs to get that information to Sherilyn.
Any problem, Mr. Christ, with us requesting that from the DDA director?
No, I don't think so. I wouldn't anticipate any.
But again, my knowledge is that all applications come to City Hall first. My guess is now they're not. Some of them are going directly to the DDA, and that's probably part of the problem. And it's understandable that anyone would turn it into to the DDA.
I have one question. Has it always been done that way? I mean,
Council adopted rules of procedure that include this procedure that everything come through the city clerk's office.
Let me restate my question.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Has the DDA sent their applications to the city clerk previously, in prior years?
Previously, people applying for the DDA have sent their applications directly to the city clerk, and
We then shared them with the DDA.
shared it with the DDA and went through the same process. But I think the last two appointment processes for the DDA kind of skipped the clerk's office.
So it's not the DDA doing something devious, it is people simply taking their applications over there to the office, is my guess. Your desire is well understood, and it can be part of the motion. And between the clerk, the next mayor, and the DDA director, you should hold them to what your request is. And that is to know know who all is.
Hi, excuse me. I have a question. Melanie, did you look to see on the DDA website if the application process is still there? Because with their website design and the updates, I'm wondering if that was somehow or another eliminated. Because I know a while ago I had checked it, and you could go directly onto the website and fill out an application.
I'm not sure where to look, so when I did my DDA if I go to the DDA meetings and I see an application, job opportunities, that type of thing, I'm not sure where to find the application. So
Does it go under board, under DDA board? Do you look under the board and how to apply? Because it may be a glitch in the updated system that they've just totally eliminated that process, because it used to be very clear they could just kind of go on there, click, fill it out, and forward it.
There's something for volunteers, Sharon, and when you look on the front page, I think Christina and Chris should take a look at it. Your board schedule and your board members are there, how to be a volunteer. On the front page, when you hover over about the DDA, there is something that says forms and applications, but I can't make it clickable.
Okay, all right, so I'll let them know that there could very well be a glitch then, too.
Thank you, DDA board member.
Well, here's my issue. I know it's a mayoral appointee, and we've already just approved 2 board members to the DDA board without following the right procedures internally. And now we're seeking to do a third, and I'm wondering, we're appointing them acknowledging that we haven't followed our own processes. I have an issue with that, even though it's a mayoral appointee.
You can vote against my motion.
I hear you, Councilwoman. It's important, but it's minor in the sense that they filled out their applications, their do exist applications. I have taken responsibility for not talking to you about them, but the people did what they were expected to do. I did speak with the DDAs and got their thoughts, and then I made my recommendation and asked it to be on the agenda tonight.
Well, I don't have any issues with the applicants themselves. I'm just.
Well, and Brian is a reappointment, so he wouldn't have even filled out another application. There would be no paper trail for Mr. Kramer.
Not necessarily. Usually just have to say yay or nay if you want to be reappointed. Yeah.
He would have filled one out several years ago when he first got on the DDA, but
I think you've got an audience question.
Yes, I had emailed the city clerk's office when I couldn't find the DDA on the boards and commissions with the application, and Marnie had emailed me back and said they were unaware that there were any openings, and sent me as an attachment the application, which is already on the website. The application was not the problem. And I had my application delivered, copy to the DDA and a copy to the city clerk, and was told it was, and it had in the upper corner handwritten city clerk and DDA both, and one circled on each one so that people knew that both were getting them. So
we have them. Again, we have them. The process is that because it's a mayoral appointment, they were not necessarily copied and given to all the council.
I understand that.
And as far as the vacancies go, the vacancies just occurred, literally. As you know from the meeting, the one woman resigned as effective 2 days ago or whatever day it was.
But she just didn't renew.
And Mr. Perlman just resigned as well.
Because he had to. He'd served the 2 terms.
So again,
But I'm also
understand-
concerned that the other business owners apparently didn't realize that there were 3 openings. Some knew that there was one because they knew that their landlord had already been on it 2 consecutive terms and could not serve any other terms until after a period of time had expired.
Well, what I tell folks all the time is apply if you're interested, regardless of what board or commission it is. We can't always predict when an opening is going to happen, but
And-
apply as soon as you want to.
And the city website is clear that those applications are held for a year. So assuming mine did get there, somewhere in this building, that it's going to be good for a year.
Sure.
All right.
And if,
And at least you should have been able to see it and know that how many other people applied. Were you aware that I had applied, sir?
I am aware. I was aware, yes, ma'am.
All right, I couldn't tell from the meeting.
I'm aware now. I was aware as of the meeting. Any more discussion?
I would move to reappoint Brian Kramer to the Ferndale DDA Board of Directors for a 4-year term expiring December 31st, 2014, and to request that the city clerk coordinate, have a conversation with the DDA director regarding future application processes so that the mayor and the council are aware of all applicants for open positions.
And openings, sure. Thank you. Well
Support.
done. Supported, seconded by Councilman Lennon. Motion by Baker. Again, I apologize or take responsibility for any confusion here.
And a comment before we vote. If we were going to hold, based on process, I would have wanted to hold all 3, I guess. I know the question didn't come up until later. And Brian, in particular, has been hugely involved in the parking committee, which the city is going to begin to dig into next week. He's a very regular attendee at board meetings, so I have no reason to not reappoint Brian. He's been a very strong member of that board.
And I concur. I think the amount of input he's put into the DDA, as well as the analysis work he's done on the parking, has been outstanding. So.
But I agree that this process was a bit shady. Agreed.
All right, we're all in
Needs to be
agreement.
fixed.
Very good, Madam Clerk.
Council members Lennon?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
Mayor Covey?
Yes, as well, passes. We'll congratulate Mr. Kramer. And item F. Mr. Bruner, would you introduce this for us?
Thanks, Your Honor. The Neighborhood Stabilization Program budget is facing about a $56,000 deficit. One of the ways in which we're seeking to reduce that deficit is by amending the contract between the city and Home Renewal Systems. It will eliminate the $5,000 contractor fee, the 20% developer fee, and the rest of the shortfall will be made up in reductions, doing fewer renovations to the remaining homes in the inventory. The cause of this shortfall were unexpected costs incurred in the earlier homes that were already completed in the project. I want to note that Community Development Director Scheer was actually supposed to be here tonight. She's actually stranded at an airport due to the inclement weather conditions we're having. So I'll try to answer whatever questions you might have in her absence.
Well, City Manager, I pulled this. The last time we heard from this, if my recollection serves me, the shortfall was about $200,000. It's now $56,000. The contract is, the shortfall of $55,000 is going to be met by doing less work on these homes. And if we look at the spreadsheet provided in item 3, that amount of money may be a significant amount on some of these. How did we get from 200 to 55, 56? I assume that's by reducing the scope of the work on some of these and now reducing it further. And I just wonder if we're seeking to stabilize neighborhoods but are spending our money and spreading it too thin, are we really achieving the goals of the of the program, or are we just sort of putting our names on what's going to become a blighted home in the, community? So, I don't know. For the amount of, this is the third time it's been here. I'd like to have had a little bit more information on how we got into this and what's going to happen going forward. But do you have any information on how we got from 200 to 56?
I think it's just, that was a estimate to begin with, obviously, and the estimates changed in the course of, I think it was in front of council 2 months ago, or a month ago.
Something like that.
Yeah, so I don't know at this point whether it was the fact that additional homes have been sold at that time, or that the forecast development costs have been reduced or completed. At this point, we have more actuals than we would have at that point, so I regard this as a better estimate. But in terms of specifically about what homes were completed when and what's been sold when, I would rely on Ms. Scheer for that, and unfortunately, she's unable to be here.
We're still in the request for information phase, Mayor.
These are NSP 1 funds, right? Not NSP 2.
I don't know.
I thought they were from NSP 1, which was the first amount of money awarded to communities that applied for the American Recovery Act. And they were specifically for HUD homes, correct?
No.
No, not HUD homes? So-
No, NSP 1 was not exclusive to HUD homes. It was any vacant foreclosed property.
Well, it seems to me that that we bit off more than we could chew, or the housing developer did. And now the grant says 28 homes, and you can't reduce the amount of homes, right? So you reduce the scope of work in which to administer or upgrade those homes to get them livable again.
That's right.
Well, which suggests to me, if we have 28 homes and we're going to do $56,000, or if the remaining homes are 11, right? Is that what it is? So 11 homes is $5,000 each, less work on those homes, and the average home sales price is
somewhere in the
50,000 range.
Yeah,
that's 10% less expenditures for the. I don't know.
Well, I think you should, the relevant column here, I think, is the total development cost, because we're spending these dollars, we're not recovering them through the sale. So you can see that on the homes we've sold so far, we've spent as little as $80,000 and as much as $139,000 in the total development cost. And one of the notable issues there was that one of the homes had structural issues that were unforeseen that caused overruns.
I had the opportunity to talk to Home Renewal Systems, and I've been through the houses that they've redone, and what they do is they virtually just gut them. It might not need new cabinets, but they put them in. It might not need a new washer and dryer, but they'll put them in. I will talk to them again, but I assume that's what they're going to do, is what really doesn't have to be replaced, like cabinets or a tile floor. So for Micah, they'll probably skip that and leave that up to the new homeowner. But I'm going to call them tomorrow. I've got to.
That'd be great. Still improvement, and still
It
take
still
these
is
homes
improvement.
that
They'll
were
bring them up to code.
in bad shape and now livable and will be sold, hopefully, and will be occupied.
But we are in a little bit of a pinch because the money must be spent and we can't change the number of homes. So
Good questions, very good questions.
I think we need to move forward and authorize it, but.
Are there any other requests for info or a motion?
I would move to approve the Fourth Amendment to the Neighborhood Stabilization Program contract with Home Renewal Systems of Michigan, LLC, extending the deadline for sale of NSP properties until June 30th, 2011, and eliminating the $5,000 contractor fee.
Support.
Motion made and seconded, Baker and Piana. Discussion finally on the issue? Madam Clerk.
Council members Piana?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Galloway?
No with explanation.
Lennon?
Yes.
And Mayor Covey.
Yes, Councilman?
My only explanation is I understand the urgency of getting this done. I just am really disappointed in the amount of information that I've gotten on this. This is the third time it's been on the agenda, and I'm asking for why we had a $200,000 shortfall. It's now down to $56,000. I'm not sure where that 100 and some thousand went. And what we're told is that there's going to be, the scope of work on the project is going to reduce without knowing what that is. Just really, the amount of information we got back is not sufficient.
I appreciate that explanation and duly noted and very legitimate. Motion passes, however. And Madam Clerk, next item.
Council liaison reports, if any.
Anyone have anything to share on the 8 Mile Boulevard Association? Suburbs Alliance?
I would just like to mention that Governor Granholm was here last week to launch the statewide program called Better Buildings for Michigan, which are doing 27 neighborhoods across the state of Michigan and doing energy efficiency retrofits. So each neighborhood that is selected out of the 27 has 420 homes approximately. And the city of Ferndale was selected as the launch city for the entire program for the state of Michigan. And it's the third city in the United States to test this program. And so we went to a house on Pearson, and Mrs. Lizzie Thompson opened up her home to the governor and state officials. Commissioner Dave Coulter was there, as well as Ellen Kogan-Lipton and Councilman Galloway, and we just commenced and kicked off the whole program for the state of Michigan. This really is a $30 million investment by the federal government into our neighborhoods, so it's a great thing. I also want to mention that the neighborhood selected, which is 9 Mile to Pearson, and then Pinecrest to Allen, neighbors or homeowners can schedule their energy efficiency audit through December 31st. And you can go to the regionalenergyoffice.org to find the outreach coordinators and contact them. So please do so if you haven't already. And encourage your friends, families, and neighbors who live in that area. Over 60 homes have already received this audit, and I hear rave reviews about the outcomes and outputs from those audits, and they're helping homeowners make financial decisions on what to upgrade in their home first. So it's been a really great program.
It's a great program, and of course reduces energy usage, which helps our country and helps the environment. Councilwoman Baker, didn't you have an audit of your home done?
I did, and I brought my report into the last meeting, and we're actually having some additional work done. There are a couple of different phases to the project. The phase one is the sort of energy efficiency audit, as well as some initial work based on what your house might need. Mine needed a lot of gaps in the basement sealed. There's a lot of new insulation in my basement. I understand that our DDA director, who's also in my neighborhood, had some insulation actually put into her walls because that's what her house needed. They really evaluate what's going on with your particular residence to give you some upgrades that fit your needs. They then have a great loan program that they've arranged through the state of Michigan. If people decide to have work over and above just that first step done, we're getting a couple of new windows. I'm getting new insulation. In my home built in 1919, I have absolutely no insulation in any of the walls. There's a lot of my house that's kind of open to the elements, so we'll be for just a little bit, relatively little bit of money, adding a lot of value to my house, as well as significantly, like 33%, significantly reducing my cumulative gas and electric bills.
Excellent. Well, it'll be chilly there tonight.
It's been chilly the last 2 days.
Okay.
But in January, it will be warmer.
Thank you. Thanks. It's a great program. The Southeast Oakland County, or the South Oakland County Mayors Association is a monthly meeting of all the mayors in the region. It's a really effective and fulfilling meeting. They meet during the 9 months of the school year. I missed this most recent one. Mr. Bruner, did you happen to go?
No, unfortunately, I was not able to
Farmington
attend.
Hills, I believe. But it's a great monthly dinner. Anything for SEMCOG?
Not at this time.
I just was appointed alternate delegate from Oakland County, so I'll
Well,
be...
you'll be joining me as the, I'm an Oakland County alternate as well.
All right, there you go. SEMCOG meetings. Transportation Writers United, any update? Woodward Avenue Action Association. Are we at call to council?
We are indeed.
Mr. Fotiades from the Department of Public Works, anything you'd like to share?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Thank you kindly. I see our labor attorneys here. We'll be talking to you, Mr. Schiffman, in just a moment. Chief of Police, Chief Collins.
Just a few quick things, Your Honor. Again, I'd like to thank Mr. Dienbach for, on behalf of the Ferndale Police Officers Association, for the contribution. I'd like to congratulate Mr. Bruner on his appointment, and sincerely, actually, will miss him. Would you give a short update on our murder investigation? We would like to remind the public that if they do have any information, or if they know anybody that has any information, please call the Ferndale Police Department at 248-541-3650. There is a $15,000 reward for any information that leads to an arrest in this case. That was put up both by Crime Stoppers and by the American Chaldean Chamber of Commerce. We appreciate that, and we hope to get some more information from that on that crime. I would like to thank the citizen who stepped forward, that her husband had. She sent a very nice note to my office. We also that was submitted by Sergeant Brown to the awards committee for the officers and the deputies from the Oakland County Sheriff's Department that were involved in that arrest, and we would like to make that presentation at the next council meeting. That was in play prior to her coming here, but we do appreciate it. And lastly, we would like to again remind shoppers to be careful out there, not only from the weather but also from potential thieves. Please keep your purchases in an area where it's not open to the public. Be conscious of your surroundings, and of course always call us if you see anything suspicious or you find yourself in a situation where you need our services.
Chief, we had a gas station robbed also recently?
That happened yesterday, yes, sir.
Citgo on West 9 Mile.
That's correct.
All right, and just to confirm what the chief was obviously talking about, the murder and robbery took place on November 26th, and that's the Dollar Club Plus store on Hilton. So we desperately need any information from residents, passersby who saw anything that evening.
Yes, we have put up flyers throughout the community. We put up door hangers throughout the community. We were spotlighted on the Crime Stoppers show Saturday night at 9:30 on Channel 2. So we're trying to get the word out as much as we possibly can.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
I met Mr. Camarco during the Fall Festival, and he's just a very pleasant, delightful man, and it's just a horrible tragedy for our town. Fire Chief Kevin Sullivan.
Your Honor, Council, I'd just like to remind everybody it's the holiday seasons. If you are partaking in the Christmas celebration with live trees, it's a good idea to make sure they stay watered. Fires are down right now, and I'd really like to keep them that way. Also, people that do have artificial trees or are buying any lights, make sure your lights are in good order, because sometimes after they get old, they do short out, and even with an artificial tree, that can cause a fire. So we're just looking at keeping the holidays safe and happy for everyone.
What about space heaters and little electric heaters? Any advice?
Space heaters, if you're looking at space heaters, they need to be at least 5 to 6 feet away from everything that could be combustible. Shouldn't be on a carpet, should be on a hard tile or solid wood floor. And they should be the type that have a tip-off switch. So if anything bumps on an animal or someone in the house, it shuts off itself automatically. Kerosene heaters, you have to be very cautious. And you have to make sure you use the right cans for fueling, because a lot of times people confuse cans in the garage and they'll put the wrong fuel into a kerosene-type space heater, and that makes for an interesting day. So that's another one to watch out for.
Chief, may I share with you before you sit down that the Prohibition Party that was organized or is organized each year by Larry and Monica Mills and a host of volunteers, and that event was held a week ago last weekend. They haven't finished collecting all the sponsorship funds, but all of those funds from the collection and the jugs will be going to the Goodfellows.
Great.
And they do report that they have exceeded last year's total, which was $3,300. So we'll have a final total, but I thank you for the news bags that you lent me. And it was just a great evening, and we appreciate some of your folks helped out as well, and it was just a good evening. So hopefully you are helping some of the disadvantaged families even as we speak here in Ferndale.
Yep, Goodfellows changed up the way they're doing business this year, but it's still set up at the back of the fire station. Everything's moving along.
The Mills will be turning those funds over to you shortly.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Through the chair, I did have a question actually about the Goodfellows. And you said they're doing things a little different, but are you still accepting donations? Do you
Yes,
need,
yeah.
What do you
The
need
things
and where
they're
do you
doing
bring it?
differently, instead of trying to put together a lot of packages and that, they're giving out more money for people to purchase at different places and that, just because of the amount of people that come in to pack everything up and handling of materials. A lot of times the kids in the schools, the canned good donations, that is labor intensive. And a lot of times we have to sort through everything because we can't be giving people damaged or banged up cans, rusty, et cetera, et cetera. So they changed up some of the things they're doing so it's not as labor intensive for them, but we're getting as big a bang, helping as many people as possible.
So what do you need and where can people donate it? Could people maybe get gift cards to Kroger or Toys R Us or something?
Yeah, or cash or check donations. They can drop it off at either fire station. Headquarters is typically a little bit better, and then I'll go to the Goodfellow Treasurer.
Thanks.
Which is one of our laid-off guys, and he's still staying with it and very active in it, so.
Thanks, Chief.
Accolades
We appreciate that.
All right.
Thanks, Chief Sullivan. Recreation Director. Julie Hall, thank you for attending anyway. We already heard from our Commissioner. Mr. Bruner, anything else you'd like to share?
Just briefly, really thank the council, in particular a lot of other community members for their graciousness and support as I have participated in the city manager search in Birmingham. Most people don't get the opportunity to have their own job search written about in the paper, and as public officials living in the fishbowl, it can be a difficult experience, but I'd like to thank everyone here in Ferndale for their really treating me and my family so well. It'll be a bittersweet experience living or leaving Ferndale, because I made Ferndale my adopted home before I became its city manager, and we have really had a great home here. So it is bittersweet, but thank everyone for their support during the process, and really the community at large for the opportunity. Certainly, I wouldn't have been a competitive candidate there for it had it not been for the opportunity to be the city manager here first. So thank everyone for that.
Absolutely. Ms. Tauman?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Nothing else to share? Councilwoman Piana, anything you'd like to share tonight?
A couple of things. First, I want to say thank you to Tom Perlman, who served 10 years on the DDA board as a board director. And I'm amazed at how many volunteers we always have in Ferndale. But what is so special is how long people volunteer for. And so I think he deserves recognition. I also am very thankful of what the Financial Planning Committee has been doing in terms of reviewing and coming up with recommendations on how to handle our revenue shortfall and looking at ways to increase expenditures. The one that I'm most excited about, I wanted to mention here, and I want to state it is in development, but as my role on City Council and through the Suburbs Alliance, working on a Wayne State student project in collaboration with the Michigan Municipal League, City of Ferndale, and the MSA, is to look at identifying opportunities and best practices for social networks inside Ferndale. And the student group would be doing a two-phase project, just looking at social networks for the Ferndale Library, in particular for an arts network, but also looking at how do citizens engage with their government in Ferndale. And I think council had on their goals external communications plan, and obviously this is going to be probably delayed because we need city manager helping us lead that as we shift. But I think the student work will be insightful, and council can help apply some of those best practices that they recommend to one segment of our communications plan, which is social networks. So I look forward to bringing something more to Mr. Bruner in the next 2 weeks, and something for council to look at. So I'm pretty excited, always glad to help students. Everybody is telling cities that the more students are interning and doing work inside a city, the more likely that they'll stay in the community and stay in Michigan. So I'm always a supporter of that type of work.
Thank you. Mr. Christ, anything to share?
Well, I'd like to congratulate the city manager on his selection as city of Birmingham city manager. That's going to be a great opportunity for him, and I certainly will miss having an opportunity to work with him. I'd like to extend happy holidays to council and to everybody in the city of Ferndale, and best wishes for the next year.
Very good. Councilwoman Baker.
My first is actually a question that I thought of, but I figured I'd just leave it until my call. I imagine that several of us, perhaps even a quorum of us on the council, may attend that financial planning committee meeting on December 29th, the one that precedes the formal presentation to the council. A question to the city clerk: do you need to post that as a meeting if three or more of us
My
can
practice
show
has
up?
always been to post the possibility of a quorum of council members being there just to cover our bases. So city manager and I will work together and make sure that is posted that way.
That way, whichever of us want to go, we'll know that we're able to at least attend and listen.
You're talking about the December 29th?
29th.
Okay.
Thank you. When the city manager sort of pulled me aside ominously and said, I have something that I need to tell you, and told me that he'd applied for this job in Birmingham and that it would soon be in the newspapers, because being public servants, you conduct your business in public. He began to talk about how much he'd enjoyed working in Ferndale, and of course this doesn't mean I don't love Ferndale, and I just said, Bob, you don't need to explain to me why you would want to seek a bigger position or a position in another fantastic community in southeastern Michigan. I am personally biased toward Ferndale, but I certainly love our neighbor up the road in Birmingham as well, a wonderful community and a great place that I've spent a lot of time. So it's a fantastic job. I'm fairly jealous that they've got you and we're losing you, because you have been absolutely invaluable as we work through this very difficult budget situation that I've sort of found my entire 3 years now on council to have encompassed. But congratulations, huge congratulations to your family. As I've already told you, I will give you all of the counsel that I have gleaned in my 8 years in working with Birmingham donors to the arts to maybe help your wife transition into some fun volunteer work in Birmingham. Just happy holidays. I think actually the Hanukkah season is already over. It's quite early this year, so as we move into the Christmas season and other holidays, happy holidays to our residents. That's it.
Very good. Councilman Lennon?
Well, congratulations, Mr. Bruner. I know I had a chance to talk to you earlier. A question for you: have you had any more emails regarding that $1 issue that we discussed regarding the library?
Pardon?
That $1 issue we talked about? You
About
got
the
it?
misquote?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm
Well,
sorry.
if you haven't, then I'm not going to bring it up, then we'll let it die.
Okay.
But Bob knows what happened with that.
Okay.
And I just want to remember, obviously winter is here. We need to be cognizant of our shoveling our walks. And let's be good neighbors. If you have a senior citizen or somebody in the area that's extreme cold, please check on them periodically. Other than that, happy holidays to everybody.
Good show. Councilman?
Again, congratulations, Bob, on the job. I think it's a great opportunity for you, and look forward to hearing great things from you up in Birmingham. But you're not gone yet. You're going to be around here for a bit, and I know, but hope, certainly, that you'll get real involved in helping bring the Financial Advisory Committee's report in both a timely way and in a format that's going to be really useful to us. We've got some challenging times ahead, and that could be a great sort of parting gift to us, helping us, providing us some direction on that. And then just hope people had Happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Scott.
Councilman Galloway made a joke.
And he does on a fairly regular basis. Just to be sure, now we have a council meeting next Monday night, correct? Before we're all saying goodbye and Merry Christmas.
Yes.
Next Monday.
A special meeting at the
joint
community center with the DDA.
DDA parking meeting. It's open to the public to talk about parking situation and issues with the DDA.
And it's at the Kulik Center.
That's right. It's at the Kulik Center. Then the regularly scheduled final council meeting of December, folks watching on TV and who may want to come, is not on a Monday. It's on Tuesday, the 28th, correct?
That's right.
7:30, the 28th. That'll be my final meeting as mayor, and I would like to request, sorry, Mike, but about a 10-minute address. I want to do a farewell address. 10 minutes, I promise.
Which, at what place on the agenda?
At the end.
Okay.
Probably like at the call. So, yeah, you could leave early if you want. And then, is there a meeting on the 29th, then, is the Citizens Financial?
Yes.
Okay, so that's not a regularly scheduled council meeting.
No, but I asked that she post it so we can go if we want.
And that's on a Wednesday.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's here, and it's here.
Very good. I've been asked, and it's a good question to ask the city manager, if he could give a brief update on the library situation.
I can't right now, but
Oh.
I will. I mean,
well,
Do you know-
we could
I
probably
mean,
do it here.
Just a recap of what happened and where they are in the cleanup process?
I haven't.
I don't know what happened. I heard
Well,
there
we
was a
could do
flood.
it. Folks understand, of course, they know from the newspaper stories that the
Yeah.
library had a flood. I don't know that we've heard the cause of the flood, but the insurance is taking care of it. It happened during the 4-day weekend, and a staff person, fortunately for us, went in fairly early and noticed the water. There's been damage, a fair amount of damage. Again, the insurance and the contractor is going to pay for it, but the result is, I'm told, originally a 10-week closure of the library. So it's been a week or two, so we're looking at least a couple more months before our library reopens. In the meantime, you can use neighboring cities' libraries. We have agreements with some of the neighboring libraries.
Sure, it's online.
And we will make sure it's good as new, and I believe there's a library board meeting this Thursday. Is anyone on the library board here? Does anyone ever go? It was in the thing we got from the clerk's office. I think there's a meeting this week of the Ferndale Library Board. So we wish them well, and we'll get our beautiful $5 million library back up and running very soon. Just very, very quickly, with regards to the crime issue, and we hear about some of these, and it's all over, unfortunately, in Troy and Royal Oak and Birmingham even, and Hazel Park and Detroit. But there is crime out there, and the single best thing that we can do is watch out for each other. Watch out for our neighbors. If you're home, keep an eye out there. If you're walking on the streets, watch out for fellow pedestrians. The police departments can only do so much, but people can be their eyes and ears. And so we in Ferndale, and we always do this, we watch out for each other. If you see anything, if you hear anything, don't be afraid to call the police. The police would rather you call and have it be a false alarm or a mistake. But the only way we can protect each other during these particularly tough times from the bad guys is to watch out for each other and to be the eyes and ears of our community. Finally, the Ferndale Blues Festival is only about 2 months away on top of everything else we get to do. I'm going to continue working on that and co-chair that. This year, the Ferndale Blues Festival is from January 28th through February 5th. We are currently looking for additional sponsors. Unfortunately, we've lost Paramount Bank, which folks understand did close, as many small banks are doing. So we've lost that sponsor. The good news is another bank, Level One Bank, has bought Paramount, and everyone's funds are safe. But if anyone's interested, businesses, corporations, in being a sponsor of the Blues Festival, all those funds go to Ferndale Youth Assistance and to Michigan AIDS Coalition. And finally, happy Hanukkah to those who celebrated that last week, and a Merry Christmas to all our other residents. With that,
we're going to closed session?
we're going into closed session. I just want to say goodbye to the people watching on television. We will close the public portion of the meeting and go into executive session. Thanks for tuning
I
in.
move that we go to closed session
For the
pursuant to
purpose-
Section 8C of the Open Meetings Act, MCL 15.268.
C, E, and H. 8C.
Seconded.
Let me get my glasses.
We understand, and seconded by Baker?
I think we do have to read the whole thing.
For the purpose of strategy session connected with the negotiation of a collective bargaining agreement pursuant to Section 8C, to consult with an attorney regarding trial or settlement strategy in connection with specific pending litigation pursuant to Section 8E, and to consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state, federal statute, legal opinion pursuant to Section 8H of the Open Meetings Act, MCL 15.26.
Support.
Well done. Motion made, seconded. Lennon, Baker. Discussion, Madam Clerk.
Councilmembers Piana.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Galloway.
Yes.
Lennon. Mayor Covey.
Yes. Passes. Let's take a 3-minute break while we clear the room and get cookies. Or bad habits you got.
You get the cigarettes, I'll get the snacks.
Okay.